families, I struggled to find the right words. But I resolved that I would do everything I could to make sure that it would not happen again. Since that time, we have accomplished a lot. But let me be perfectly clear, there is still more work to do. Last year, in another state, an angry young man was able to use an assault rifle to kill his fellow students. Shocked and dismayed, several retailers here in Oregon and around the country changed their policies to increase the age of purchase. I want to express my gratitude to Dick's Sporting Goods, Walmart, Kroger, Fred Meyer, REI, and LL Bean, who made those policy changes in the wake of that shooting. Senate Bill 978 ensures that retailers have the discretion to make those changes. The bill also works toward improving safety by setting clear standards around safe storage and preventing access by minors to guns in homes. Just as important to wear a seatbelt or a helmet, it's critical that people keep their guns safely secured when not in use, particularly when children are in the home. It regulates ghost guns, a concept that Attorney General Rosenbaum will explain in a moment. And it allows our sheriffs to perform more thorough background checks when an individual applies for a concealed handgun license. Finally, the bill also improves access to firearm injury data by the Oregon Health Authority. As we move forward together to increase the safety of Oregonians, we can do so with better and more complete data. Our ability to make informed policy decisions will be enhanced tremendously. As with all of our firearm safety bills, this has been a team effort. We would not be here today without the leadership of the chair, your chair, Floyd Krasinski, Chair Williamson of the House Judiciary Committee, Senator Ginny Burdick, Attorney General Ellen Rosenbaum, and many other legislators who work tirelessly in session on these critical issues. I thank not only our elected leaders, but also the many citizens here today who relentlessly pursue improved firearm safety measures for all of our Americans. Thank you for your consideration of this very important bill, and I urge that.
You guys step back and I'll give you some seats.
I come to you today in support of Senate Bill 978. And while we're going to the comments of the Governor, I will my remarks on sections 14 through 18 of the Dash Amendments, which speaks specifically to undetectable untraceable firearms, such as 3D printing. Like many of you, I am increasingly concerned about the growing presence of undetectable and by downloading tutorials online to build your own gun with a 3D printer, or by purchasing physical parts online and using electronic tools to build your own ghost gun. And I'm talking about the person who can build a semi-automatic privacy gun, free from any background check requirement. And the scariest part, these guns have no serial number, so there's no way to trace it by law enforcement if you steal lawfully. 3D printed guns made national news last summer, because 21 state attorneys general, including myself, successfully sued the Trump administration and moved to stop the U.S. Department of State from reversing their previous rules to allow 3D gun tutorials and instructions to be made available online. Thankfully, the U.S. District Court in Washington agreed with us. In Oregon, we have laws on the books which ensure that only responsible gun owners who are not disqualified by felony convictions, incidents of domestic violence, and other listed factors are able to purchase a firearm under Oregon law. This vitally important system can be effectively circumvented, however, through ghost guns. Ghost guns fall into at least two broad categories, both addressed by Senate 978, so I will speak to each in turn. In 2012, the United States group known as Defense Distributed publicly released schematics that would allow a 3D printer to generate a single-shot firearm made entirely in plastic and therefore largely undetectable by metal detectors. Only a year later, a partially 3D printed AR-15 fired 6 shots before failing. And less than a year after that, a partially 3D printed AR-15 fired over 100 shots and did not fail. The technology continues to advance. In July 2017, a Texas man named Eric McGinnis was arrested in a wooded area outside of Dallas after law enforcement investigated the repeated sound of gunshots. When they responded, they contacted McGinnis, who was disqualified from owning a firearm due to a domestic violence-related protective order. When officers searched his backpack, they discovered a loaded short-barrel AR-style semi-automatic rifle and a list titled 9/11/2011 List of American Terrorists. It featured the name of several Republican and Democratic members of Congress, as well as their home addresses. This AR-15 style rifle was partially 3D printed and fully operational, lacking a serial number, and could not be purchased. The second type of ghost gun addressed by Senate Bill 978 is the so-called unfinished receiver. Under federal law, it is presently legal to purchase the majority of parts that are needed to assemble a functional semi-automatic rifle under the so-called 80% lowers rule. Under this rule, a person may purchase an unmilled lower receiver of a firearm, which requires additional home milling in order to become a functional firearm. This sounds complicated. It's not. As one website boasts, once you have secured your lower receiver and your jig, all you need is a drill press, drill bits, and mills. To some, the thought of building your own AR-15 starting with an 80% lower may seem intimidating, it goes on to say, but it shouldn't. Thousands of people have finished their own 80% lowers without an issue, experts and novices alike. And I might add, I watched a video on my way down this morning that looks great. Good for me. New Jersey passed legislation banning these items in 2018. Their experience is instructive. While investigating a cocaine distribution ring, law enforcement recovered 6 AR-15 rifles made from parts without serial numbers, which were being sold on the black market for $1,100 to $1,300 each, nearly double the normal market price. The only rational reason to pay this price: the market is made up of individuals legally prohibited from purchasing an AR-15. Senate Bill 978 closes this dangerous loophole by imposing established background check requirements and serialization expectations on both 3D printed firearms and unfinished receivers on threat of criminal penalty. It also enhances our expectation of safety by outlawing the possession of any firearm built to avoid our metal detectors. These are important, common sense protections that will enhance our public safety, and I urge your support.
Thank you.
Justify on both the impact of firearm injuries and deaths in Oregon, as well as the importance of having the data from emergency departments to support firearm safety efforts in our state. Over the past decade, the number of firearm deaths in Oregon has been steadily increasing. In 2017 alone, most recent data, 529 Oregonians died of firearms, of which 439 or 83% were suicides. A lot of people don't recognize that actually suicide is the greatest consequence of Oregon's rate exceeds that. Deaths men are 6 times more likely to die of firearm deaths than we know these deaths from Oregon's vital death reporting system. We also know a little more about the circumstances. 77% of the deaths involve a handgun. We know about location of death and health status, all those kinds of things. However, firearm injury data from emergency departments are much less complete. Our current system involves tracking data from something called Essence. It's a syndromic surveillance system that basically puts in what's happening at the time the person comes into the system. And we also have data from hospital discharge. Again, neither of these data sets include what we call external cause codes. So if it's a firearm injury, we wouldn't have data necessarily on whether it's a suicide, whether it's intentional suicide or homicide, or it was accidental. So those kinds of data help us to both track information, the number of injuries that occur, the type of firearm involved, and whether the injury was intentional or accidental. And all of this will be very useful to help us prevent effective strategies, to help us implement effective strategies to look at firearm safety. Our mission at OHA is to improve the health of our Oregonians, and this includes preventing premature deaths, suicides, and homicides. And having access to these firearm-related injury data would help us to understand these data better and could inform efforts to improve safety. So thank you for the opportunity to this.
That is Representative Smith Warner. We will have the first opposition, Keely Hopkins, Kevin Starrick, and by phone, Judge Crawford.
Could you hold this on there? No. While I try to help this. Thank you.
Good morning when you're ready.
Chair Brzezinski, Vice Chair Patrick. For the record, my name is Barbara C. Warner, and I represent House District 45, which is Northeast Portland.
Okay, thank you.
Maywood Park and Park Roads. The public health crisis of gun violence has been one of the motivating activities of my service profession. I was at a democracy fair at a school in Southeast Portland. Feeling scared, horrified, and overwhelmed, I rushed to my children's school. There I joined many other parents huddled outside, needing to confirm that our kids were safe and sound in their classrooms. Our kids were, but 20 kids in Connecticut never made it home from school that day. Across the country, 36,000 people were killed by gun violence in 2018, including 22,000 who died by suicide. I think we can all agree that this reality is unacceptable. As a mom and as a human being, I believe that common sense safety measures are the least we can do to address this epidemic of gun violence. That's why I'm honored to speak today in favor of passing strong, impactful regulation for safe storage of firearms. The concept is one that is very familiar to responsible gun owners. Ensure that your weapon is safely stored and is not in use. Representative Kenny Geyer and I have been working on this issue for years, and I know she wishes she could be here to testify with me today. In the 4 years since we began working on this issue together, the urgency has never been greater. Safe storage is first and foremost not a judicial issue, but rather a public health tool. One of the most powerful examples is about suicide. Most people who attempt suicide do so within about 10 minutes of making the decision. And if they have access to a gun, typically in the home, 85 to 90% die. If they do not have access to a gun, it's far more likely that they will survive. And out of those who survive, around 90% will live out their lives and will not end up dying by suicide. And suicide prevention is just one motivating reason for safe storage. Paul Kemp is here to share his personal story of the dangerous and tragic implications of leaving guns unlocked and unsecured, where they can be taken by an unauthorized user. We also must pass safe storage in order to protect Oregonians, especially Oregon's children, from accidental shootings. Submitted to the record is a list of recent Oregon shootings involving children with unsecured or stolen weapons. In the most recent case, just last November, a 2-year-old in Baker City gained access to an unsecured and loaded gun and died from a self-inflicted gunshot. I will say this again. This is a public health crisis. Sections 4 to 10, Senate Bill 978, places civil penalty on the gun owner of a weapon that was unsafely stored. Just like when we passed seatbelt regulations, civil penalties impose a strong disincentive against unsafe behavior. This bill does not establish a required inspection of the way that an individual stores their guns, but rather an expectation shared through a public health education campaign about a practice that will help keep Oregonians safe. Gun sellers will be required to post this requirement in their establishment, and if weapons are found to be unsafely stored, the gun owners can be penalized for their unsafe action. The most important part of Senate Bill 978, in my opinion, is that it imposes strict liability on the legal gun owner to be held financially responsible for the actions that are taken with their gun if it's unsafely stored and taken by an unintended user. This means that gun owners are responsible for what happens with their gun. If a gun owner stores their firearm safely and it is not in their control, there are no consequences. But if they choose to leave it unsecured when they're not in control of it, or if they fail to report their firearm when they realize it's been lost or stolen, or if they allow a minor to use it unsupervised, then they are financially responsible for the damages that occur. Firearms are by their very nature extraordinarily dangerous, and if gun owners do not take extraordinary precautions to prevent their unintended use, they should be held responsible. Within this bill, there are built-in, carefully crafted exemptions to strict liability that accommodate reasonable behavior. For example, there is an exemption for minors who have a hunting license and are on a supervised hunt, and there is a 72-hour reporting period for reporting lost or stolen firearms. This bill has also carefully thought through instances of self-defense, police-involved encounters, target shooting, repairing firearms, and allows for illegal storage of firearms in a highly secure gun room used only for the storage of weapons and/or ammunition. The safe storage policy in this bill is not trying to penalize responsible gun owners or interfere with Oregon's long-held hunting traditions. Rather, it establishes in law the standards that responsible gun owners already follow, with the goal of preventing the potentially devastating consequences of unsecured firearms. All in all, Oregon will be a safer place to raise a family, go to school, and go to the mall if we pass safe storage regulation. I've received many unsolicited messages from Oregonians who are gun owners, from parents, and from adult children with elderly parents who have wanted this passed for a long time. Together, we can put into law this public health tool that will help address the public health crisis of gun violence. Thank you for listening to my testimony, and after the rest of the panel is complete, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Testimony on Senate Bill 978. My name is Lisa Reynolds. I'm a pediatrician and a mother and the board chair for State of Safety Action. And I've been an advocate for gun violence prevention for years because I care about the health and safety of Oregonians and of Americans. And as a physician and a scientist, I know that gun violence constitutes a public health emergency. Any other mechanism that costs 35,000 Americans their lives while injuring several times that number would be aggressively addressed and mitigated. Fortunately, we know that there are steps we can take to reduce the toll of gun violence, and I will speak today in support of the bill requiring safe storage, which is an important component of Senate Bill 978. Specifically, we know that secured guns prevent their use by minors, thieves, or other unauthorized people. And studies have shown, time and time again, that states that have safe storage laws have lower rates of accidental gun deaths and gun suicides, which in turn leads to an overall decline in overall suicides in those states. In the U.S., 100 kids a year under the age of 13 get a hold of a firearm to kill or injure themselves or others. 40% of these kids, about 40 kids a year, are under the age of 3. Research has proven again and again that safe storage laws will lower the unintentional gun injuries and deaths of children. 2/3 of school shootings are committed by minors, most of whom use a gun taken from their own homes. And furthermore, in 2017, firearm suicide took the lives of 14 Oregon children and teens. We know, as Representative Smith-Warner laid out, that if these kids had not had access to a gun that day, that they were feeling so desolate, that they would most likely be alive today. And lastly, guns that are stolen have a much higher chance of being trafficked or used in a crime. So a child shoots his little sister by accident at home. A high school boy brings his father's gun to school and kills his classmates and a teacher. Another boy commits suicide at home with his father's gun. A young man takes his buddy's unlocked loaded machine gun from the coffee table and kills 2 beloved members of our community at Clackamas Township. These stories all happen in Oregon and they happen all over our country, but they could have been prevented had the gun owners, like most gun owners, locked their guns. Safe storage of firearms is the appropriate next step to address our gun violence public health emergency. It is supported by 2/3 of Oregonians, including gun owners, and the time is now to pass safe storage legislation. Thank you.
Vice Chair Thatcher for holding this important hearing to residents since 1985, also a owner. The circumstances that allowed for the shooting tragedy 6 years ago will finally be addressed by the 2019 legislature passage of SB 978, which includes a requirement for safe firearm storage. 6 years ago, a young man spent the night at a friend's home with the intention of taking some of his guns that were all left unattended, unlocked, and fully loaded in order to commit a mass shooting. With premeditation, that shooter bought additional magazines and ammunition to fill those magazines in the weeks ahead of the shooting. I want to emphasize that there was no burglary or break-in at the gun owner's home. According to police, all of the gun owner's firearms were out in plain sight and unlocked. Those unsecured firearms are the weapons used to murder my brother-in-law, Steve Forsyth, hospice nurse Cindy Ewell, and wound teenager Christina Shevchenko. The gunman also committed suicide with one of those unlocked and loaded firearms, adding to the annual total of Oregon suicides. My sister and I learned on Wednesday morning the owner of those guns had no obligation under Oregon law to report them as stolen, and nor did he face any consequences whatsoever. It is also worth noting, for all those who have never purchased a new firearm, that new handguns purchased at a retail outlet come with a locking device from the manufacturer. Many long guns are also supplied with a locking device too. The ones I have purchased have come with a locking device. There is no excuse to not use a locking device on a firearm. We've already bought it in most cases. It is a conscious choice to leave firearms unsecured. This careless act can lead to tragic results. I'd like to at least get a hold of a couple of examples of a cable lock and a trigger lock. These are less than $10 a piece, and they, like I said, in many cases they come with the firearm. Here in Oregon, 82% of the annual gun deaths are suicides. The Oregon gun suicide rate is 20 points higher than the national average. One Oregon resident dies by gun suicide every day. The U.S. firearm suicide rate has increased 19% in the last 10 years. Even more tragic, in the last 10 years, there has been a 61% increase in children and teens using a firearm to commit suicide. Access to a firearm increases the risk of death by suicide by 3 times. When a firearm is used for suicide, death occurs in about 85% of those attempts. While using other methods of suicide, less than 5% of those attempts result in death. The majority of those that survive a suicide attempt get the help they need, or the temporary crisis is over and they do not attempt suicide again. For years now, I've been volunteering with an organization here in Oregon that responds to traumatic events. We are called out by police and fire. During this volunteer work, I responded to 6 suicide deaths. 4 of those suicide deaths involved a firearm. While all of the suicide deaths are tragic and traumatizing for the family and friends of the victims, the firearm suicides are by far the most traumatizing. I have seen our law enforcement officers help clean up a scene at a suicide so that the victim can get in and get their personal belongings and deal with it. It is not something anybody wants to witness. The safe storage practices advocated for in this bill are also recommended by the NRA, gun safety instructors, and firearm manufacturers to keep children and unauthorized persons from gaining access to a firearm. I am a gun owner and have been for most of my life. Responsible gun owners safely secure their weapons when not being carried or used. It is time that all gun owners do that. There have to be consequences for those reckless and careless gun owners who don't secure their firearms when it leads to injury and death of others. I ask you to vote yes on SB 978.
Members of the committee, my name is Tom O'Connor. I'm a lifelong gun owner. Grew up here in Oregon, hunting and target shooting with my father and my grandfather. I strongly support Senate Bill 978 and its requirements that all firearms be stored securely when not in use. This advice is included in virtually all firearm instructional materials. Some have argued that requiring a firearm to be stored securely would defeat the purpose of having it readily available for personal security. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. There are a wide variety of reasonably priced, secure storage devices readily available to gun owners that are specifically designed for quick access. At the same time, they can prevent children or unauthorized persons from obtaining the weapon. Quick access safes can be found at most sporting goods stores for as little as $50. Locking mechanisms can include simple 4-digit codes or use biometric fingerprint readers. Keypads can be manual or electronic, depending on owner preference. These types of safes can be opened in a matter of seconds. When choosing a locking or storage device, there are many options depending on the type of firearm, the uses of the firearm, and the circumstances of the home. I am a gun owner, but more importantly, I am a parent and soon-to-be grandparent. My daughter-in-law is a teacher. I want to reduce the toll of gun violence. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I urge passage of Senate Bill 978.
I'd like to thank Kevin Sterrick and my phone Judge Crawford. The following panel will be Michael Finlay, Josh Underwood, and Doug Brown. And Keely, I'm not sure if how you want to do this. We do have the judge online, and so however you want to do your presentation.
Okay, I think I'll start followed by Kevin and then Seth.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Krasinski, members of the committee, my name is Keely Hopkins. I'm the State Director for the National Rifle Association, here today on behalf of our members across Oregon in opposition to Senate Bill 978-1. The safety of our families and our loved ones is something that's important to all of us. However, when we look at the provisions that are contained in this 44-page bill, there's one main theme across all of the sections, and that's that they're aimed at restricting law-abiding Oregonians from either accessing or possessing their firearm for self-defense purposes or other lawful purposes. Senate Bill 978 disregards the primary reason that individuals own a firearm, and that's for personal protection. Studies indicate that firearms are used between 500,000 to 3.5 million times per year for self-defense. And in about half of those cases, the firearm wasn't even used. It was the mere presence of the firearm that was enough to deter the attacker. Yet, it's these instances of self-defense that will be restricted by Senate Bill 978. The main outcome of many of these provisions will be to reduce the availability of a firearm for personal protection. Today, you'll be hearing from our panelists more specifically about the effects of Senate Bill 978. And you'll also be hearing from law-abiding Oregonians that rely on firearms for personal protection and who have traveled here today from across Oregon to tell you about how this bill will impact them. Whether it's a single woman living alone that wants to be able to access her firearm for protection, but it will now be locked up and rendered unavailable for that personal protection. Or you may hear from a 20-year-old that will no longer be able to purchase a firearm at certain locations because Oregon has legalized age discrimination for certain constitutional rights. Or you may even hear from a 17-year-old that will no longer be able to participate in Oregon's youth hunting programs without the direct supervision of an adult. As you'll hear from the upcoming panelists, this bill will be unlikely to impact crime, but it will undermine the ability of Oregon's law-abiding citizens to defend themselves. We urge your opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
On civil rights in this building.
Kevin Sterrick.
A more vindictive, incoherent, and impenetrable piece of legislation. There isn't enough time to address all the absurdities in this amendment, but under it, it will be virtually impossible for a person to leave their home with a firearm. Maybe that was the intention. We've heard from previous speakers about crisis and epidemics. In a state that's being crushed by out-of-control debt, one that has the lowest graduation rates in the country, that has a critical housing crisis, where we cover up the deaths of babies, where we house our foster kids in jail cells, except for the ones we keep in hotel rooms where they get to watch their caseworkers having sex, where our cities have become filthy refugee camps. The supporters of this amendment, want to put people in prison for 5 years for driving near an airport or public building. This state has real and very serious problems, and I strongly suggest that you start addressing them instead of turning your most law-abiding citizens into felons for no reason other than the hatred for people who choose to exercise their right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Judge.
The section of this measure would be greatly reduced or stopped by requiring adult supervision. These youth are not out in the woods causing trouble. They are responsible members of our society that are carrying on a tradition that goes back generations. It is important to point out that there are a lot of teenagers a lot of these teenagers come from low-income families and may only have one gun that is shared between 2 or 3 generations. Without the opportunity, without the opportunity to use and learn respect for firearms, we will be raising a generation that does not understand the brevity or vitality of firearms. When it comes to gun storage, it is important to realize that there are different needs and realities across our state. East of the Cascades, we have large working ranches that cover areas larger than the Portland metro area, areas that are larger than from Gresham to Hillsboro or from the airport to Wilsonville. In these vast areas, it is not necessary or practical to lock up a gun. There are still pickups with guns and gun racks ready to protect or defend livestock. In these locations, sheriff's response time is not measured in seconds or minutes, but in hours. These people do not have the ability to ask an attacker to wait while they unlock their gun and remove their security device. It is important to state that I agree with both sides of the legislature and the people of Oregon that not a single innocent life should be taken from gun violence, but making law-abiding citizens and criminals must be responsible. It is imperative to look at this issue not only from the viewpoint of urban Oregon, but from all the different perspectives across our state. Thank you so much for your time.
Judge Crawford and Doug Brown. And on the deck, we'll have Representative Waldy, Tom Sargent, Leslie Wynn. Yeah. Good morning, gentlemen. Whoever would like to start, first give us your name and then your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Michael Finley, and I'm the Director of Government Relations for NSSF, the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Just a little bit about us. We are the trade association for most firearms, ammunition manufacturers, as well as ranges and retailers, FFLs, not only within the state of Oregon, but nationally as well. We're here today to talk about some of the concerns that we have with 978. Specifically, I know we're under some time constraints here. I'd like to draw your attention to sections 14, 16, and sections 4 through 12 as I will limit my testimony to those sections right now and why they're problematic for our manufacturers and our retail members. First and foremost, I'll start with section 14 and the requirements for our FFL dealers and retailers to categorize receivers after sales and put detailed descriptions once a sale occurs. Right now, most of undetectable and untraceable requirements are covered under federal law. Specifically, I would point you to 18 USC 933 subsection I, in which it deals directly with this. These are also covered under the Gun Control Act of 1968 and the 1988 Undetectable Firearms Act, which covers most of what I believe Section 14 as well as Section 16 is trying to accomplish. Right now, ATF, in consultation with experts as well as doing a rule commenting period where they were able to work with those that work in the firearm manufacturing industry, put together an 80% rule. This right now, if implemented, the definition just isn't clear. It adds confusion and uncertainty for retailers and manufacturers and relies simply on intent. If one were just to look at a piece of metal, just a piece of metal, that somebody had the intent to make into a firearm down the road, all of these provisions and requirements would come into effect. So this definition is very expansive, and we would implore the committee to look at the federal law to see if that covers what this committee and what this bill is trying to cover within this language. In addition, just the requirements that it puts on a retailer to describe and categorize and write down what a receiver is problematic. Most of them are similar in nature, and to suggest that they have to write down what's different about it, they could do so with color, I guess, but other than that, it would be hard for them to comply with this law. It would really put a burden on retailers. In addition, through the manufacturing process, while there is an exemption there, it's not clear, and our manufacturers would have a hard time creating receivers and being fully confident that they are in compliance with Oregon law. I'll move on to Section 16 right now. Section 16, dealing with the untraceable and undetectable firearms, is also very problematic for us. I believe one of the proponents mentioned ghost guns as well as 3D printing as being the impetus for this. Something that the committee should know is, again, this is all covered under the 1988 Undetectable Firearms Act. Currently, you just can't manufacture products and just start selling. You have to obtain a FFL to do so, and if you do so, and you are in the business of selling or manufacturing firearms, there's already a federal requirement that markings have to be included on that firearm. So again, we as manufacturers, our members, are a little confused as to what is it currently in federal law that this Oregon law is trying to cover. Additionally, within the 1988 Undetectable Firearms Act, in terms of requirements for manufacturers, you must comply with a litany of both from the manufacturing side as well as from the retailer side, a litany of requirements from the federal side. So again, we would ask what the committee and what this bill is trying to accomplish, that state law does not do so. And I know I'm running a little bit out of time, and I want to defer to one of our manufacturers as well as law enforcement here. But in terms of sections 4 through 12, one thing that the committee might not be aware of is manufacturers as well as retailers have to comply with strenuous storage requirements that ATF has put, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms has put in federal law. They're very stringent, and at first glance of this reading, it would put our members in a very tough position where they have to choose between following federal law and following state law, because they conflict in some portions. I can't get into it because there's too much, but one would be your definition of gun room. An entire store is supposed to be secure on the federal law. However, in Oregon law, you would say that they have to have a separate gun room within their store, even though federal law has the entire store covered. I can't get into too much of that. I can stand for questions if you have anything else on this, but I want to defer to my colleagues over here.
Joshua Underwood, owner of Radiant Weapons in Redmond, Oregon. I helped put on the rally, defend the second rally on the 23rd of March this month, and with Joshua, I have 1,483 signatures that we collected at the rally. I'm estimating that was about 1/3 of the people that were able to find a booth and make their way forward to sign this, stating that they don't want any further gun legislation passed. Moving up from there, Radiant Weapons employs 40 Oregonians, and we manufacture firearms and firearms accessories. I'm proud to be a part of an industry that is responsible for arming the law-abiding citizens of this state and our nation, and doing our part to allow them to defend themselves, their families, and their communities from those of the criminal element of society who seek to harm others. Beyond Radiant Weapons, there are many other firearms-related companies in Central Oregon employing the vast number of people whose employment would be greatly affected by these laws. As a father, I care just as much for the safety and security of all our citizens, especially our children, as anyone, even from the opposing viewpoint on this subject. I would call both sides of this issue to look at the facts that are available to us and work together to take action based on evidence in setting out to protect our schools and our communities as a whole. The following set of facts are given to me by Officer Michael Boyd, who served and recently retired from Wheeler County Sheriff's Office, where he served as Chief Deputy. He also served as Captain and Acting Chief of Police in Prineville from 2003 to 2014. Before that, he was Chief of Police in Marysville, California. He officially retired with 34 years of service in law enforcement. Officer Boyd stated, The Oregon Department of Public Safety Standards and Training teach law enforcement officers responsible for in getting involved in active shooter incidents the number of casualties on average if citizens wait for law enforcement to come help in an active shooter scenario. It's 18.8 casualties. If citizens are able to fight back, that number drops to 2. That's official training in the state of Oregon. Officer Boyd also stated the average time it takes law enforcement to resolve an active shooter incident is 14 minutes. During those 14 minutes, criminals can be harming or killing a large number of victims. And lastly, Officer Boyd stated, it is extremely rare for an officer to be able to arrive and halt a crime in progress, whether this is a crime of violence between one criminal and one victim, or an act of terrorism like an active shooter incident. Law enforcement officers are not first responders, citizens are. Because of these facts, the disarming of law-abiding citizens greatly increases the threat to the public. The public would be greatly impaired in their ability to protect themselves and other unarmed citizens around them. Criminals, by definition, do not obey the law. Therefore, these laws will have no effect on holding back criminals from obtaining illegal weapons to commit violence on the now more vulnerable law-abiding citizens. The ultimate effect, if these laws were passed, is to endanger the citizens of the state. The solution to protecting our kids at schools is multifaceted and goes beyond the scope of what I can address today. But here are 2 points. It requires an honest-to-goodness financial investment in security measures that they deserve to have, because honestly they are mandatory if we are serious about dramatically increasing their safety. These include bulletproof doors with mechanical and or electronic controls to isolate students from an active shooter. Beyond that, of course, there should be officers on site at all times that are trained in the use of deadly force to stop an active shooter. These officers should be present at every school in the state. These are just a couple of practical solutions that would, without question, dramatically increase the safety of our students. Yes, this is expensive. However, we as taxpaying citizens and you as our representatives need to put our money where our mouth is and actually solve the problem, rather than blindly ignore the facts and pursue solutions that would only add to the problems. I, as a business leader in Oregon, will be the first to donate and to help campaign for real solutions to protect the innocent of our great state. Thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration on the facts I've laid out before you today.
An Oregon State Trooper. I'm here speaking on my own behalf. It's impossible in 2 minutes to address the multitude of problems with this bill, but here's my perspective based on my training and my experience. As a practicing Oregon lawyer for over 40 years, I find many parts of the bill to be incomprehensible. This bill invites millions of dollars in litigation costs from the state of Oregon and undoubtedly a trip to the Supreme Court. It will be impossible for ordinary citizens or lawyers to clearly know when their actions are illegal. It will lead to selective, discriminatory enforcement. I spent over 20 years as an Oregon State Trooper. Reducing crime, and in particular violent crime, is what I am all about. This bill will not do that. The violent offenders in our society do not care one bit about gun control. They will not obey it. They never have. A person willing to murder someone with a gun does not care if possessing the gun is a crime. Gun control has not led to less gun violence anywhere in the United States. In fact, just the opposite. Yes. As a trooper, one of my assignments was as a firearms investigator. When a purchase was denied or there was a question about a firearm, I was called in. I can tell you, there are hundreds of thousands of legally manufactured firearms in Oregon that have no serial number. They were manufactured without one. They were not required until more recently. This bill will make instant criminals out of people that own a Woodsman 22 pistol or a Marlin 22 single-shot rifle. There has been no gun violence escalation in Oregon. States that have made it easier to carry a gun or carry a gun concealed have seen reduction in crime, not increases. The United States is a safe country. Despite what the media might say, Oregon is a very safe state. Gun violence is heavily concentrated in the core of a few cities, and these laws will have no positive effect on that. I strongly urge that this bill not be passed into law. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Waldy. Tom Sargent, and Leslie Wendt. While they're getting situated, I'm going to have Jillian, our staff attorney, one of the attorneys, to go over what the bill does. I wanted to get the invited testimony out first. We're now going to be entering into our 2-minute portions for each of the people after we have the presentation. The next panel that's on deck will be Phil Watson, Greg Turtain, and Mike Fashion, I believe. All right, first, Jillian.
Members of the committee, Senate Bill 978, the -1 amendments, sections 1 through 13 set the minimum age for firearm sales, safe storage, theft or loss, and transfer to minors. It allows gun dealers or individuals in the business of repairing or servicing firearms to establish a minimum age of 18 to 21 years for the purchase of firearms or firearm-related accessories. Exempts gun dealers or individuals in the business of repairing or servicing firearms from restrictions prohibiting discrimination based on age to allow enforcement of any age restriction adopted pursuant to Section 1 of this Act. Requires a firearm to have an engaged trigger or cable lock and be stored in a locked container when being transferred from one individual to another. Declares a Class C violation offense for each firearm transferred in violation of this provision. Provides strict liability for injury that occurs within 2 years as a result of a transfer made in violation of this section. Requires a person who owns, possesses, or controls a firearm to report a loss or theft of the firearm to law enforcement as soon as practicable, but no later than 72 hours from the time the person knew or reasonably should have known of the loss or theft. Declares a violation of this section a Class B violation for each firearm an individual fails to report lost or stolen. Establishes strict liability for injury caused by a firearm stolen that occurs within 2 years as a result of a failure to report a firearm made in violation of this section. Requires a person who transfers a firearm to a minor to directly supervise the minor's use of the firearm. Establishes strict liability for injury to a person or property caused by a minor's use of a firearm transferred in violation of this section. Provides exceptions for transfers to a minor for hunting purposes. Requires the Oregon Health Authority to establish by rule minimum specifications for trigger locks, cable locks, and containers equipped with tamper-resistant locks no later than January of 2020. Creates the crime of unlawful storage of a firearm. Provides that a person who leaves a firearm in a location where they reasonably know or should have known a minor is likely to gain access, and a minor does gain access to a firearm, commits a Class A violation. Unlawful storage of a firearm is a Class B misdemeanor if a minor obtains a firearm in violation of this Act and the minor exhibits the firearm in a careless, angry, or threatening manner. Unlawful storage of a firearm is a Class A misdemeanor if the minor obtains possession of the firearm in violation of this Act and the minor injures or kills another person. States that a person is prohibited from possessing a firearm if they have 2 or more convictions of unlawful storage of a firearm under this section of this Act. Sections 18 to 25 of this bill regulate the possession of untraceable and undetectable firearms, concealed handgun licenses, and data collection. Prohibits the possession, manufacturer of untraceable or downloadable firearms and declares a Class B felony unless the person is federally licensed to manufacture firearms and does so in compliance with federal regulations. Prohibits the import and sale of an unfinished frame or receiver, and declares a Class B felony unless the person is federally licensed and does so in compliance with federal regulations. And provides that it's a Class C felony if a person knowingly possesses an unfinished frame or receiver that is not serialized in accordance with federal regulations. Provides that each licensed hospital shall submit to the Oregon Health Authority emergency department records relating to patient discharge and outcome for any patient receiving treatment for an injury caused by a firearm. Allows the sheriff to charge a fee equal to the fee from the Federal Bureau of Investigation for conducting a nationwide fingerprint check of an applicant. Provides authority to a city, a county, a metropolitan service district, or a port operating a commercial service airport and school districts and colleges to adopt ordinances regulating possession of firearms in buildings within their jurisdiction by persons licensed to carry a concealed handgun, limiting the affirmative defense provided in ORS 166370. Finally, exempts from background checks firearms that are transferred to a museum.
All right, so we're going to start the hearing room as quick as possible. Tom Sargent and Leslie Wendt. Representative Aldi.
Thank you, Chair Brzezinski, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'm Marty Wilde, representative from House District 11. I'm a 25-year veteran of the U.S. military, active and reserve with 3 deployments. I served as an infantry weapons specialist and have fired most standard military firearms between the M9 9mm pistol and the M250 caliber heavy machine gun. People are often surprised when I say that I unequivocally support safe storage, but safe storage is a fundamental principle of military service. When I served as an infantryman, there were two grave sins that would unleash the ire of any non-commissioned officer present: a negligent discharge and leaving a firearm unattended. A fundamental principle of military life is that firearms must always be locked in storage or attended by a person. Other than military police, military members do not generally go armed in barracks. We draw our weapons from the armory before going into the field or deploying and return them at the end of that duty. Even in the field, we do not leave firearms unattended. I served as a staff judge advocate advising commanders regarding discipline of troops, both in garrison and while deployed. The penalties for the true primary firearm safety violations, negligent discharge, and leaving a weapon unattended were career-ending. It is challenging to describe the visceral dread that the idea of leaving a firearm unattended in the presence of a child brings me as a veteran of the combat arms. We risk our lives to protect civilians. The idea that someone would put a child's life in jeopardy by allowing them to access a firearm without supervision feels like a devaluing of the sacrifices I have made, more profound than any purely symbolic gesture like a flag burning. I believe in the right of lawful armed self-defense. The provisions of Senate Bill 978-1 regarding control of a firearm are commonsensical and fully protect that right. Fundamentally, a firearm does you no good in self-defense if someone else can get to it first. That is also the standard that protects children from injury. Thank you for your time. I urge you to forward Senate Bill 978-1 with the due pass recommendation.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hoffman, I understand that you're subbing in for Mr. Sargent.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I don't believe Mr. Sargent was ever caught, but I can explain. So, Chair Brzezinski, Vice Chair Thatcher, members of the committee, my name is Dr. Ben Hoffman. I'm a pediatrician at RoyBendshadler Children's Hospital in Portland, Oregon, and the medical director of the Tom Sargent Safety Center there. I also currently serve as the chair of the American Academy of Pediatrics Council on Injury, Violence, and Poison Prevention. I'm here today to speak for children and express my strongest possible support for legislation to protect children and adolescents from preventable firearms injury and death. I'm going to share with you two brief stories. One involves a patient of mine who this winter killed himself. There were no warning signs, school was going well. He came from a family that was loving, stable, and supportive. His friends were solid. He had no history of depression or behavioral issues. There were no warning signs at all. One morning like any other, his family returned from errands and found him lying on the floor of his room, dying with a gun at his side and a suicide note in his desk. He found an unlocked gun in a moment of distress, and he killed himself. There's one thing that I know he was really looking forward to, and that was graduation from elementary school. As a pediatrician, I cared for a 3-year-old toddler that found his parents' handgun in the bedside table. A period of several seconds of inattention from the parents, which is completely understandable. The child found the gun, explored it, it went off. We tried mightily to save him in the emergency department. We could not. I can never wipe away the memory of sitting in a room telling the parents their child was dead or watching them weep over their dead son. Unintentional gun injuries are 100% preventable. A child or teen who does not and cannot access a gun has a 0% chance of being killed or injured. It is impossible to gun-proof a child or a teen, therefore it's our responsibility to child-proof guns. At the Tom Sargent Safety Center, we have distributed over 1,000 handgun vaults, and we're doing a survey among handgun owners in Oregon that are parents, and we have found that virtually all of them support safe storage, and they are willing to use rapid access gun vaults.
All right, thank you. Archie, thank you for coming forward. Our next panel is Phil Watson, Greg Turtain, and Mike Fashion, I believe. The following panel will be a panel of 4, and then we'll follow that with a panel of 4, but this second panel on deck is Mark Newton, Elizabeth McKinnon, Reverend Lopez, and Jim Jagger. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Chairman. I'll go ahead and begin. For the record, my name is Phil Watson, representing the Firearms Policy Coalition here today, here in opposition to SB 978. And while it's impossible to condense 44 pages into my testimony right now, I just want to stress a few points. 978 is a very untenable measure as far as our group is concerned. It is very aggressive against the carry of firearms for self-defense. As you heard previously from the testimony today, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, myself included, that have used firearms for self-defense when carrying in public. The Crime Prevention Research Center has done an extensive amount of studies on this issue, and they found that over 90% of mass public shootings within the last 50 years or so have occurred in these designated gun-free zones. And I think most of the zones that are going to be designated in this bill are basically unsecured and unchecked areas. It's not like you're going through TSA at the airport where they check everybody. This bill would hold individuals accountable for the acts of criminals, and I think that's a pretty far stretch for even some of the more bigger supporters of legislation like this. Lastly, 978 appears to use prior restraint in a crackdown on free speech in relation to firearms materials online. So our group is very active on this issue, and I'm proud to point you to our lawsuit against the New Jersey Attorney General right now. They're attempting to limit free speech, and I'd be happy to point you to more information about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of personal protection training in Salem. I'm also a chaplain with emergency services in Kaiser. I'm going to address the principles underlying all of this. Some people say that our founding fathers could not envision our modern weaponry, and that if they had, they never would have included the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights. But they didn't write the Second Amendment in ignorance of the future. They wrote the Second Amendment with clear knowledge of the past. And because of their knowledge of the past, they saw what is happening today in this room with crystal clear 2020 vision. They wrote the Second Amendment to guarantee that armed citizenry would never become unarmed subjects. Through the exercise of natural rights by law-abiding citizens in their day-to-day activities, which are protected by the U.S. and Oregon constitutions. You want to make felons of your citizens so that you can, well, let's say, take away all their guns. There are over 270,000 active CHL bearers in the state of Oregon. Many hundreds of thousands more are gun owners who do not yet have their CHL. Politicians comfortably ensconced in districts in Portland and Eugene may treat our rights with disdain, but politicians outside of those two urban areas better take notice. We are engaged, we have the numbers, we network, and we will vote you out of office. One final thing. We don't need lawyers and judges to parse the meaning of the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights. Our founding fathers wrote it in for the common person to understand. When the Second Amendment states, "shall not be infringed," we know exactly what that means. You are way past infringing on our rights, and now you want to double down. Shame on you.
Respect everyone. We do not need to have applause. It just takes more time away from those ones.
And I'm from Terrebonne, Oregon. I retired from UPS after 27 years, but I joined the military when I was very young out of high school, and I ended up going to Navy SEAL School and eventually being a submarine diver. And I just realized how much it got my life straight by joining the service and getting a good perspective to go on and work at UPS and do a good job there. And when I see that the Senate bill has the age restriction for buying guns, when I was allowed to go in at a very young age and be considered an adult and train other people on weaponry, that now they were giving gun stores the right to choose which age they consider appropriate when the military allows 18-year-olds to be part of that and train us well and say that, you know, we're responsible adults to defend our country, but now those rights are being taken away from adults that were given a certain age where they could leave their family and make their own choices. I believe that people need to respect the young people. If they're going to have a lower voting age, there should be no limitation on taking away the 18-year-old standard for buying guns at this point, when these people are just as much of an adult as anybody buying one at age 30. And on another issue of the concealed weapons, it's vague about where they're saying that they're going to be limiting them now. I've had a concealed weapons permit for over 30 years, had no issues, nothing I've ever had to take it out for, but in my way I feel like I'm protecting myself and my family, and I wish that they would keep the areas open that are now available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So our next panel includes Reverend Lopez and Jim Jagger. Now, the following panel, if you are not in the room, please come downstairs. We do have seating over to my right, close to the American flag, where we're allowed for those who are coming for the next panel. And that next panel will include Jim Mishaw, Joey Nations, Douglas Brown, and Cole Rainey. All right.
Chair Prozansky and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, my name is Reverend W.J. Mark Knudsen, Senior Pastor, Augustana Lutheran Church, Portland, Oregon, past President of the Northwest Health Foundation Board and Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. Currently, I serve as Chair of Lift Every Voice Oregon, a coalition of over 3,000 Oregonians and individuals who come together, gun owners, non-gun owners, rural, urban, Republican Democrats who are committed to ban the sale of assault weapons and large capacity magazines in Oregon, as you know, HB 3223, HB 3265. However, I'm not here about those today. As one born and raised in the state, here I'm about common sense laws that are being put forth with SB 978. It's a bill that speaks to the vital moral and ethical mandate for to end gun violence in the state and to lift the weight of fear from our children and youth. I've had too many funerals of suicide victims by gun violence. We are there in those times of pain and suffering, and we speak today to say, let's do this. It's not about good Oregonians or bad Oregonians. We are all Oregonians, and we want common sense law. So this is an excellent bill to achieve that. One simple example, guns being displayed in public buildings. Our congregation has been a sanctuary church since 1996 when I arrived back. We do not allow guns or any other weapons in our house of prayer for all people, and we're in good stead. Neither does the Willamette National Cemetery, where our veterans are buried, nor does the Veterans Hospital, where we visit quite often. The idea that someone could bring a gun into a public building or the state capitol when there are children and youth and elders present is absurd, and we know that. So I strongly encourage you to pass this bill. Mary Wright Edelman said a prayer. I hope it is your prayer too. God, please help me to show my children that by my actions, as well as my words, that they are loved. When Joshua Heschel, a great rabbi, wrote to John Kennedy when there's a freeze in the civil rights movement, said, the hour calls for moral grandeur and spiritual audacity. I pray we'll move this forward. Thank you for your service. God bless.
I'm a retired lawyer and have the privilege of volunteering on the Ceasefire Oregon Board and as a director for Lift Every Voice Oregon. I'm here today to share the reasons, particularly that those boards, and particularly the legal board, and I have a letter that I'll submit, support this bill strongly and without any reservation. It's a wise bill. It takes, you probably heard the phrase, it takes more than a village. This takes a lot more than a village. And you have wisely included, or will include, 3 groups. It includes individuals, it includes private sector entities and public sector entities. The individuals have the responsibility and the obligation to store their guns fairly, as safely, and report lost and stolen. So they take on that responsibility. The private sector, gun dealers, sports facilities and sports stores, and also all individuals who are transferring guns also have the right, and we hope they exercise it, to set a minimum age, setting basically safety for young people as a priority, perhaps over profit, but that's fine. We applaud that and they do that. And finally, public entities, schools, universities, cities, counties, everyone who operates, every group that operates a public building will have the opportunity to determine that it can be
a safe place without guns and prohibit those guns. Empowering these agencies and institutions to increase the safety for all who enter a public building. It's an essential step in making the state of Oregon safer, more welcoming, and more equitable for people, irrespective of their age, their race, or their gender. So we ask you to pass this bill. It's wise, and it will make us much safer in Oregon. Thank you.
I'm Lynn Smouse Lopez, pastor of Ainsworth United Church of Christ. I want to thank you all for your time, and thank you, Chair Prozansky. 8 years ago, Ainsworth, the church I serve, took a stand for safety and declared ourselves a gun-free zone. It was clear to us that guns didn't make us safer. But my journey to work to end gun violence began in 1973, when my older brother was gunned down at work, trying to put himself through college. He survived, but his life was interrupted and put on hold for 2 years, and he was scarred for a lifetime. I also had a classmate whose teenage brother was messing around with a shotgun with some of his friends. He got blown away. He was killed. The day that Sandy Hook shootings happened, I was here walking into some of your offices, walking around the Senate and the House, working for common sense gun laws. It's been a long haul, and we at Ainsworth United Church of Christ applaud any action that will help make our church, our city, our state, and our nation safer. This bill, SB 978-1, works towards that goal. It requires safe storage that helps protect children. It helps protect those that have a mental illness, that can have a mental breakdown at any time. And I understand what that's about because my son has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. I would dread the day that he would be in a home where the gun would be available to him. It further protects gun dealers and stores that want to set a minimum age because they see the problems of selling to younger people. They see the dangers. We don't need any more guns, and certainly no more ghost guns. So I applaud your courage. I give you thanks, and I hope that you have the courage to vote this on.
Good morning. My name is Jim Jagger. Who am I? I'm a father of 6, grandfather of 10. Lived in Oregon all my life. I'm a member of Lift Every Voice and also Moms Demand Action Eugene and Springfield. I was prior to retirement an attorney for almost 50 years, 5 years of that a prosecuting attorney, and the rest of the time handling domestic criminal cases and other matters of a high crisis nature. I observed more times than I'd like to count the death or injured persons or property caused by weapons in the hands of persons, children, other situations that would have not had the weapons had the safeguards requested in this bill been in effect. Safe storage with the incentive of possible criminal and monetary sanctions, prohibitions and transfers, background checks, prohibiting weapons in certain public places, and the ability of certain dealers to not sell to persons under the age of 21. Most certainly others have seen the same that I have seen over these years. The highest courts have already dealt with this issue of Second Amendment. Heller, Aguilar, and a series of other cases dealt with the situation that you have the right to regulate, and that is occurring across the nation, and those are being upheld by courts. Will it solve completely the problem of violence? Laws against assault, burglaries, has that solved it? Of course not. But that's not an excuse for us to act and do the best that we possibly can. My profession provided a window displaying a significant part of the community that's aggressive, threatening, seeing laws and intentionally choosing to disobey them. But it doesn't mean that we need to avoid that responsibility we have. You as our legislators have immense responsibility to protect us. Protect us from our own lack of judgment and other issues. I therefore ask you in the name of all those who have suffered in the past, those yet unnamed who will suffer in the future, I ask you in the name of Cindy Newell and Steve Forsyth to advance this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next panel is Rainey. The next group on NAC will be Elena Andrews, Sadie W., Alyssa Thompson, and Sue Kastner. And if those individuals, if they're not in the room, if they'll come on in and sit staging, that would be great. Gentlemen?
We are adamantly against this bill. It's too broad. It just provides too many problems. personal level, it deprives me of my house. In this bill, public or private school is defined by 39.315. The grounds adjacent to a building described in paragraph, the school. I can stand on my property line, reach my hand out and touch the school building next door to me. That, I would say, is grounds adjacent to. When they resurveyed my property, they moved my north side fence. An eave of a building owned by the school now overhangs my back fence. If I can't have my guns there, I can't have them. Somebody's got to buy the house from me. Hey, okay, I'm going to be back out at the farm anyway. On another note, I'm a retired police officer, did 13 years in the military. I've had all the firearms training, I'm a range master, certified range safety officer, the list goes on and on and on. 1981, I was on patrol in Yamhill County. Guy was stalking our house. He was listening to a police scanner. He heard myself and 3 of my partners going out for breakfast. Our house was broken into. My wife could not defend her or the kids because my gun was locked up. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on that if anybody wants to go into it.
Joey?
I'm Joey Nations.
Sir. Cool. So Doug Brown and Doug Rouse here, you're also on this panel. Gentlemen, who would like to go?
Hello, my name is Joey Nations, and Chair Zansky and Vice Chair Thatcher of the committee, thank you for having me. Like I said, my name is Joey Nations. I'm a father, I'm an Oregonian, and the congressional candidate that's going to retire Kurt Schrader in his 5th Congressional District in 2020. I oppose him for 2 reasons. I have 2 young kids with futures in this state and country. Everyone here knows storage laws and other infringements have an end goal of total confiscation. We're the only country on God's green earth with an absolute and enumerated right to keep and bear arms. I want that for my children's future, for good reason. Our forefathers were wise men who saw into the future and knew the dangers and tyranny that prevented that modernity would offer. The Second Amendment keeps us more free and independent than any other nation on earth. Why would you trade the safety and freedom we enjoy for less of both? How far will power-hungry political creatures go to control the individual citizen? Therein lies the essence of the problem. We know how much control politicians like to exercise over regular working people all over the world. We have seen the way that regular citizens are treated in countries that are not welcome American citizens. Germany, Russia, Venezuela, the list goes on. We will never give up our firearms to politicians in this country. After I send Kurt Schrader packing in 2020, you can bet my first act in Congress will be to support federal preemption on garbage socialist legislation like this. We lawsuits for this state guaranteed, and I will lead the charge. I would urge each and every one of you to vote against this bill. Show the citizens you understand the Constitution, show them that you understand and respect their rights and freedoms, or don't, and show us who is pulling your strings.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to start off with a statistic. From the Crime Prevention Research Center, 97.8% of mass shootings have happened in gun-free zones since 1950. So those of us who are saying that gun-free zones automatically equate to a safer community or environment is statistically incorrect. I'd also like to go through a little history lesson with some of you who may have forgotten something you learned in a history class. Mao, Hitler, Stalin, Castro, Pol Pot, Gaddafi, and Kim Jong-il all took the guns, and it led to the implementation of socialism or communism, but most importantly, mass death. Gun control has a track record of death and mass genocide throughout the 20th century, and I'm going to list off examples. In 1911, Turkey established gun control. From 1915 to 1917, 1.5 million Christian Armenians were rounded up and exterminated. In 1929, the Soviet Union took the guns away, and from 1929 to 1953, 20 million disarmed political dissidents were murdered by their own government. In 1935, China established gun control. From 1948 to 1952, 20 million political dissidents were killed. In 1938, Germany established gun control, and 13 million Jews and others were rounded up and killed. You see the trend? I feel that both Democrats and Republicans in the state of Oregon are fed up with this intrusion into our lives. And currently, Americans own 46% of the world's billion guns. And this greatly reduces the frequency of terror attacks, prevents foreign invasion, and permits the average citizen to protect himself and their family. I believe that those of you who are pushing this bill are putting the safety of Oregonians last and the needs of your special interests first. Thank you.
While they're coming up, our next panel will be Lori Kimmel, Rick Popal, Ronnie Duncan, and Randy Bromesco, I believe. All right, who'd ever like to start? You'll first give us your name to the record.
I'm Eliana Andrews. Thank you, Senate Chair Krasansky and members of this committee. I thank you for having me today to discuss why SB 978 is so important to me and many of my friends. My name is Eliana Andrews. I'm a student who attends a public high school, and that means that every month we go through what is called a lockdown drill. We have lockdown drills often because in our society, we have witnessed so many mass shootings that they have become so normalized. At this point, which we have to prepare that a school shooting could happen. I assume that many of you have never been in a lockdown or a lockout. It is one of the most terrifying things to go through and live through day to day. Over the school speakerphone, you hear a person saying, "Lock lights out of sight," or "Lockdown, secure the perimeter," over and over again. You sit in the dark corner of your classroom with your friends and classmates. Everyone is too shocked, worried, and scared and confused to even speak. Everyone is frantically texting their parents, saying that something could happen to them, and letting them know that they love them. After going through a lockout or a lockdown drill, you walk away like it is merely nothing. But the emotional scars left behind, having to go through something like this, last forever. The fact that we, as a society, have seen so many mass shootings, and the only solution we have is to try and get less people killed by a gun, is by being prepared for it to happen. This is absurd to me. We cannot start acting like fire drills and lockdown drills are the same, when in reality they are not. I am not here today to take anyone's Second Amendment rights away. I just want to feel safe in school and in my community. I strongly believe that raising the minimum age to buy a gun would stop mass shootings like the one that we saw in Parkland, Florida last year. Sometimes it is hard to fathom the reality of how easily accessible a weapon can be to those who want to commit violent acts. And the first step to start beginnings with passing pencil gun safety bills to help our communities, schools, and places of worship can begin to feel safer.
Who'd like to go next?
Thank you, Senate Chair Krasansky, Vice Chair Thatcher, and members of the committee. My name is Alyssa Thompson. I'm 18 years old. I'm a recent high school graduate, and I still live near a high school in my neighborhood. I'll be in college in the fall. I lived close enough to hear the alarms from the high school, the bells, and if it came to it, I would hear the gunshots in my bedroom. When they have a drill, I always wonder if this is it. Is it a fire drill or a lockdown? What am I supposed to do if there's an active shooter in my neighborhood and I'm home alone? I tell other students that if they're locked out of the school and there's a shooter around, that they're welcome to hide with me in my house. That's a conversation starter that I shouldn't have. Someday I want to be an art teacher. I want to share the joy of art with my students and our future generations, without hiding them in the supply closet like my art teacher had to do with me and my classmates. One of my greatest fears is that a student who is a danger to themselves and others is able to steal a weapon from their parents in an unsafe storage system. And they come into the school, and what will they do to us? What will they do to my students and myself and the staff? Safe storage will finally become a reality that we need to protect our future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Krasansky, members of the Judiciary Committee, for giving us this opportunity to speak. My name is Sadie, and I'm a middle school member of March for All Lives One. On December 11th of 2012, a gun was stolen. And hours later, on December 11th of 2012, A man opened fire on a crowd of Christmas shoppers in the Clackamas Mall. Friends dodging through the crowd, children barely able to walk, waiting helplessly in line to get a picture with Santa. On December 11th, 2012, 2 lives were lost and hundreds more were brutally changed. And that day, December 11th, 2012, was the day that my hometown wasn't safe anymore. Because of that day, when I walk into a mall, I wonder if I'm ever going to walk out again. If I'm ever going to see my family, my friends, my little sister. My eyes are constantly scanning the exits, the windows, the crowds, the people, their pockets. I'm scared. We all are. Every single day of our lives. But what's most troubling about this terror, this fear that I, along with thousands of other students, carry with us, is that this attack could have been prevented. This attack could have been stopped. The people filled with dreams and potential that were lost could be sitting here right now. That hundreds more, forever traumatized by this event, could be living out normal lives. The shooter had stolen his firearm earlier that morning. The owner of that gun knew that it was stolen, yet it was never reported. And hours later, people died. This could have been prevented if this law, requiring guns to be locked when not in use, and requiring firearm owners to report when their guns are lost or stolen, had been in place. Law enforcement could have tracked down the AR-15, prevented this from happening, saving lives and rescuing hundreds more from decades of fear and trauma. You have the power to prevent future tragedies like this. So please, we're relying on you. Use this power wisely because you could save my life.
Advisor for a number of student groups here in Oregon working on gun safety. I only started working with the students about the time of the march last year. I didn't know anything about gun violence prevention at all. But over the last year, they've taught me a number of painful things. I didn't know what active shooter drills were. I didn't know they existed. I didn't know that they put smaller students in cabinets. And that some students are told to find something to gun themselves, like a pair of scissors or a book. I didn't know that in some instances they're actually asked to identify a student in the room to tackle the shooter. I didn't know that when the students walk into a restaurant or a classroom, they look at the windows. They look around to see where the exits are. They look to see which walls are concrete and which are drywall so they know where best to hide. I didn't know that the threat of gun violence lives in their heads every single day. And as one student puts it, she's afraid and she's angry. She's angry because fear now makes up more of her body and water. The students work very hard on a bill of their own. While that bill isn't moving forward, 978 includes many of the provisions that they asked to be introduced, and for that we are all very grateful to the committee for hearing them, for listening to them, and for giving them a seat at this table. What I do know right now is that they all just want to feel safe in school. They maybe want to graduate, they want to go to a prom and experience the magic of their first kiss. That's all they want. I know that bullets do not discriminate based on political party or age. Bullets don't screen for religious or sexual preference or orientation, or race or income level. I do know that if this is signed into law, it is not a guarantee that there won't be another mass shooting. It's not a magic wand to make everything better, but things like safe storage and required reporting of stolen firearms and banning undetectable guns is a step in the right direction. I also know that the students who have testified here and the hundreds that I've worked with across the state over the last year have more guts and integrity than I ever will. All thank you, Mr.
All right, thank you, ladies. Our next panel, Lori Kimmel, Rick Kunkel, Ronnie Dunnick, and Randy Basco. The next panel after that will be, I believe it's Hillary Ewing, Debbie Lindgren, and Erica Bond.
Good morning, Chair Zansky and Vice Chair Thatcher and committee members. My name is Lori Kimmel. I'm a retired law enforcement professional. I'm here today because the threat of a muzzle of a gun saved my life. But the we have heard the governor, we have heard the attorney general, we have heard all the emotional pleas. These are the facts. If we would educate people on gun safety, exactly like the Eddie Eagle program, if you would teach that in the schools, what it does, it teaches the children, you see a weapon, don't touch, get an adult. What the governor and the attorney general and the others have neglected is the mental health piece. Most of these people have had mental health problems. The state has ignored the mental health. That is the real crisis. We have people wandering the streets that are seeing imaginary friends and enemies. Ever since Damage State Hospital was closed, we have more people that need more mental health wandering the streets. And those are the two pieces that are being ignored by the governor, by the attorney general, by the legislature. Mental health and the education piece. This Connecticut, where Sandy Hook shootings were done, has the most stringent gun laws in the United States. Education and mental health is going to help you. It's going to prevent. Most of all, this is not a common sense bill. It's requiring minors to hunt with adults next to them. It's reasonless. You can't protect me. I have to protect myself. Thank you.
My name is Rick Koval. I'm a retired Army officer. I'm also a retired law enforcement professional. I'm a registered voter, and I'm against Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 978. Oregon is a pioneer state. We hunt, fish, and enjoy all manners of sporting events, to include those with firearms. 18 is the legal age in Oregon to do everything except drink, use tobacco, or drive a car. Raising the age to 21 to purchase firearms is a disservice to our young adults. Over 99% of those 18 to 21-year-olds that currently own firearms are law-abiding young adults who treat them with respect and use them safely. What the legal investigations after an active shooter have all shown is that the shooter has had mental health issues that were never discovered, never evaluated, and never treated. That is the key to preventing gun violence. If we deal with the treatment of those that in need, gun violence would dramatically drop. That is by far the elephant that's in the room. We need gun programs to help our K through 12 and colleges understand what guns can do and what they are supposed to do. The NRA Eddie Eagle program is great for K through 12 because it teaches them, if they are not familiar with firearms, don't touch it, find an adult, tell them where it is. That is the message that the Eddie Eagle program has. That is a free program that the NRA teaches through NRA instructors like myself. If they are invited into the schools, they can teach that. There's also other things that you can do to harden the schools, which are very important. Some are expensive, some are not. We have the money through the new tax bills that are coming on board for education, $5 to $6 billion a year. Let's use some of that money to help prevent gun violence. Thank you.
Seems like I'm coming here to testify at one of the rallies every year now. More and more gun laws come up, and this bill here is just a lot of bills in one. And individually, maybe I might support maybe one part of it, but not all of it together. Constitutional rights don't change with law enforcement control issues. We have to maintain our constitutional rights or we won't have a free society. I want to take each, I got about 2 hours to talk about this stuff. The state legislator taking emergency issues with using the emergency clause for every bill is nothing more than disenfranchising the voters. And there's no emergency with this. There's no gun emergency. You all know that. You all are aware of it. You're just trying to pass the bill out that the people vote on it. But I wanted to say real quick here, 49 seconds. War billions of Americans across the country have watched the attacks on not only the Second Amendment but other erosions of our rights. What is referred to is death to the Constitution by 1,000 paper cuts. The division of political differences has grown, and by all reasonable standards, a revolution is not a potential but is currently occurring. For the most part, it's been nonviolent, with exceptions. But given the unrelenting attacks against our Constitution, patriotic Americans feel a growing sense of urgency to stop the 1,000 paper cuts before serious bleeding occurs. Excuse me. Those who choose to destroy the Second Amendment by way of regulation fail to understand the heart and soul, passion, patriots, veterans, and everyday armed citizens carry. The second is the defense of all other rights, protecting the country from would-be tyrants, and it is the hill on which many of us will lay down our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panel Erica Vaughn. Our next panel after that will be Randy Sherman, Frank Martin, and I believe John Gullo.
Good morning, Chair Krasansky, Vice Chair Thatcher, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Hillary Ulig. I'm the volunteer state legislative lead for the Oregon chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. I'm also the mother of 2 kids in high school who have gone through school lockdowns, and they both texted me, "I love you, Mom," like they were saying goodbye just in case, and it broke my heart. I'm here today to urge you to vote yes on the -1 amendment and Senate Bill 978. This past fall, I and many of our Moms Demand Action volunteers worked hard to help elect gun sense champions to our state legislature. On Election Day, Oregonians delivered a clear message that we want leaders who will help break the pattern of gun violence in our nation, which kills 100 Americans and wounds hundreds more every single day. This proposal contains many common sense ways to reduce gun violence in our communities and gives us the tools to help manage firearm access in ways that will keep guns out of the hands of people who should not have access to them. Purchasing or possessing a firearm comes with a great responsibility. This proposal will help to reduce gun violence by allowing gun dealers at gun shows to establish a minimum age for purchase of firearms, by encouraging responsible storage of firearms. This is something the majority of responsible gun owners do already, but SB 978 will make it clear that all gun owners need to store their firearms in locked containers and away from children. By requiring reporting of lost or stolen guns, which will help law enforcement be aware when guns may potentially be in the hands of people who should not have them. We know that gun thefts have been on the rise in recent years, and research suggests that the majority of stolen firearms recovered by police were recovered in connection with crimes. Banning untraceable, undetectable firearms, which protects all of us from dangerous situations in public places. I urge you to support this bill.
Thank you, Chairman Krasansky. My name is Debbie Langren. I'm a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, along with being a parent and a high school teacher. I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 978. I work directly with advocating for gun safety at the national and state level with Everytown and Moms Demand Action. The United States has become a nation of gun survivors, directly and indirectly. America's gun death rate is tragic and unique, 10 times higher than other high-income countries. Gun violence is now the second leading cause of death for American children. Nearly 82% of gun deaths in Oregon are suicides. That is 1 every 22 hours. The U.S. firearm suicide rate has increased by 19% over the past decade, with a 61% increase among children and teenagers. These statistics highlight the critical need for the bill. The effects of gun violence extend far beyond these casualties as well. Gun violence shapes the lives of millions of Americans who witness it, know someone who was shot, or live in fear of the next shooting. Moms Demand Action advocates for responsible gun ownership while keeping guns out of the wrong hands and aims to create a culture of gun safety. This proposal is a step in the right direction to address these issues. It allows gun dealers at gun shows and certain businesses to establish a minimum age of 18 to 21 for the purchase of firearms. This is significant since 18 to 20-year-olds are offenders in gun homicides at a rate 4 times higher than adults 21 and older. It also calls for responsible firearm storage. We are grateful you are considering gun violence prevention measures this week and proposing legislative solutions. I urge this committee to vote yes on Senate Bill 978. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Erica Vaughn, and I have been a resident 12 and 9. I'm a former middle school teacher, a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America for the past 4 years, and a gun owner. Firearms have always been a part of my life. As I was growing up, my father was a duck hunter. His guns were always properly stored in locked cases. My husband and my 2 older children are avid hunters. My youngest talks with excitement about the time when she's old enough to take her hunter safety course and go hunting with the boys and her dad. Firearm safety in our house is a constant. Our firearms are stored in a locked safe with ammunition locked and stored separately. The safe was a gift from my in-laws when I was pregnant with our oldest. It was not inexpensive, but that is the cost and the privilege of gun ownership. Gun safes are not the only safe storage option. You can purchase for about $10 and in some cases even get for free from a police department a cable lock. That's also a safe storage option. We chose a gun safe because it is the most effective safe storage option for our family. Our children understand the impact of a gun because of the way in which we treat them. When they are not in use for hunting or shooting, they are in the safe. Upon returning from a hunting or a shooting outing, they are cleaned before any of their gear is put away, and they are returned to the safe. My role in Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America is as their state Be Smart lead. Be Smart is the gun safety education program. In this role, I educate people throughout the state about safe firearm storage. When people tell me, I teach my kids that they should never ever touch a gun without an adult present, and I know that they understand about gun safety, I tell them, well, I have 3 children, and they're all very different. But one thing is the same. I could tell you about situations with each child when I absolutely told them not to do something, and they did it anyway.
Erica, thank you very much. Our next panel is going to be Randy Sherman, Frank Martin, and John Goff, followed by Tammy Wexler, Amy Wexler, and Laureen Crum.
Good morning, Chairman and committee. Thank you for letting me speak with testimony today against Senate Bill 978. My name is Randy Sherman. My wife and I, we live in Eagle Creek, Oregon, off a little farm, and we've been there for over 40 years. I'm a native Oregonian. I'm still a sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, Vietnam veteran, disabled with prostate orange cancer in remission. I am saddened by the chipping away of my Second Amendment right to bear arms. I'm saddened that I'm being hamstrung on protecting my wife, our children, and grandchildren. I do not have armed guards or live in a gated community like some celebrities do. I'm a law-abiding citizen, and I don't want to be made into a felon. I see our culture is going upside down and has lost its heart. If you're a bad person, you're okay. If you're a good person, you are labeled some kind of a foe. Our state has a bad guy problem. We have an opioid and drug problem. a crime and mental health problem. Let's fix those items first. Take the guns away from the criminals. Do not pick honest, law-abiding citizens who follow the rules. It's not about gun control, but about control. The criminals will never abide to these rules. They cause the problem on soft targets and need to put away from decent citizens for a long time. Use the existing laws that we have in place to promote the salute, but with the criminals. Please do not disarm our Second Amendment. Us good guys should not be punished. I want to protect my family. Please oppose Senate Bill 978. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you.
Longtime Oregon resident, retired Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force, and for 3.5 years I had the privilege to serve as a law enforcement officer in another state. I'm speaking here today in opposition to Amendment 1, Senate Bill 978. I've heard all the arguments today, and one thing I will bring up that has not been brought up in this discussion is it goes with the concealed carry permit orders. The amendment actually says we can let the cities, county, metropolitan services, schools determine more public areas to prohibit CHL holders from carrying their firearms. And also raises the fee of the CHL services. So what's the sense of that? You're essentially defaming the law and keeping the concealed license holders from carrying their guns in different areas. There's much more to this amendment. To boil it all down to, I'm hearing from various people who support this bill that I'm guilty of a crime. I'm a gun owner. I want to remind this body that the people have the right to bear arms for the defense of themselves and the state, but the military should be kept in strict subordination to the civil power. That's Article 1, Section 27 of the Oregon State Constitution. I resent being told every year that as a legal gun owner, I'm a problem in the gun violence. I resent the constant laws that are bringing back and forth. I strongly oppose this bill, and I wish this body would vote against it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. This morning. My name is John Gallup. I'm from Yamhill County. Retired first responder, most recently volunteer fire chief. And in my years, I guess I just have a story. I'm not with any group or anything in particular, and I've heard a lot of good testimony today. A lot of it makes pretty good sense, and some of the things that I've heard concern me. Not long ago, I was on a nice day trip with my wife and elderly neighbors in the Mount Hood National Forest, huckleberry picking. And on the way out, a car was tailgating me and cut me off and blocked me from proceeding down the state highway 224. The occupant of the vehicle pulled out a large pipe from the back of his vehicle and proceeded towards my vehicle. I took out my self-defense firearm and put it in his face and told him to leave. He did. I protected my wife and my neighbors. Reading the things in this bill concern me that I'd be able to do that. If my gun is locked and my ammunition is not available, I could not have protected my family that day. I live rural. I always have, and I can't fly all night in a timely manner. That's pretty much it. I'm a man of a few words, and I just appreciate the time here today to share that story because it's true. John, thank you.
Our next panel after that on deck will be Lauren Putnick, Robert Hart, and Jean Hart. Well, we'll go ahead and let's all get started.
Good morning, Chair Thatcher, and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Amy Wexler, and I'm here to testify in favor of the statutory amendments to Senate Bill 978, which would grant much needed protection to our veterans. I'm a member of the board I refuse to set precedents for the second law. Thank you, Dr. Discretion. Second, I would like to address 50% using a gun owned by a family member. Survivors of suicide attempts report only 10 minutes of thought between the idea of taking action. Briefly, putting a stumbling block like gun safes and gun locks between the suicidal person and the weapon, we can reduce their access to this deadly means of suicide and get people the help they need. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. My name is Talia Wexler. I live in Northeast Portland, and I'm an 8th grader at Northwest Academy. I'm a member of Students Demand Action for Gun Sense and author of the Every Time for Gun Safety Coalition. I'm here in support of the Dash 1 Amendment to SB 978 because the safety of the members of our community is a priority, and responsible storage saves lives. Today, I will be specifically addressing the portion of this bill that enforces safe storage. Children are incapable of grasping the significant danger of a gun. An unresponsibly stored weapon in the home, especially one with children present, could easily transform from something intended to protect your home into the cause of somebody's death. Approximately 4.6 million children live in a household with at least one gun that is stored, loaded, and unlocked. Many states have already passed laws mandating that owners responsibly store their firearms, and we should follow them. The step of enforcing responsible storage, and therefore enforcing responsible gun ownership, is not precautionary. It is an immediate need for the safety of our families. I joined Students Demand Action for Gun Sense because the fear I feel in my classroom, the fear I feel in shopping malls, and the fear I feel when I visit home without knowing whether or not there's a irresponsibly stored gun, and because I know that my peers feel the same burden and fear. This legislation not only has the power to lessen these fears, but to lessen the reasons for having them. If we can place a major boundary between a child and the dangerous weapon that they may be able to toy, between a suicidal teen and a weapon that can end their lives, or between a gunman such as the one from the Clackamas Town Center shooting, who killed Cindy York and Stephen Forsythe, valued members of our community, why would we not choose to enact this? Requiring responsible storage of a gun in a gun safe or with a gun lock does not interfere with the rights of a gun owner to own a weapon. A gun safe can be opened within seconds, but can still protect against access by children or prohibited people. It can intervene with the unlawful use of that weapon, which protects the rights of all of our families.
All right, thank you. Our next panel is Lauren, Robert, Art, and Jean Art. Welcome to come forward. As they're coming forward, we're now past the meeting has been authorized to continue until 10:15. I'm going to extend that to all panels that are on this page. So the next panel will be Jim's Otto Schnell, Henry Wesslinger, and then we'll have one other panel from the opponents after that. Who'd like to go next?
Thank you. Chair Krasinski, Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. My name is Robert Hart. I'm from Jackson County, Oregon, so it's traveled a ways to get here. I'm a veteran of the Air Force. I've lived in my house for over 40 years. When I bought my house, there wasn't a key to open the front door. It was never been locked. That's the way rural Oregon was when I moved in. I've been broken into by the kid across the street because he needed to sell things for drugs. There seems to be a bigger problem with guns. I think that there's other factors that are in work here. One of the things that I have concern about this bill, it's too overwhelming. In sections 6 through 12, there's 8 pages just dealing with how to say, put away my firearms. In Jackson County, the sheriff is 10, 20, 30 minutes away when I get a call. So even when I broke it into, it takes way too long for them to get there. If I have to go to different places to get ammunition for my firearms, I have no way to protect my family. I'm really concerned here about the emergency clause, trying to force this through and make it very difficult for the people of the state that have something to say about this. One of the questions that I have to come up with is looking at the drug issues. There's more people that die from drug overdose than gun violence. We're not calling for locks on medicine cabinets. We're not calling on the age to be increased for driver's licenses for kids because there's a higher percentage of kids that get in car wrecks and get hurt. Things that are in place today work if they'll let them work. And I don't think this bill does that. It just is too overwhelming, and it will make criminals go away. The last piece is, when I walk down the street with approval from every different jurisdiction, my concealed handgun license can make me a criminal in one place and a hero in another. Thank you.
Chair Krasinski and Vice Chair Thatcher and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am opposed to SB 978, and most of my reasons have already been stated by one person or another, but I did jot down a few things that were of importance to me. One of which is if you've ever been awakened in the middle of the night by a chicken screaming or a goat hollering because they're being attacked by a predator, you know that you have to get out there now. And if you have to go to one place to get your ammunition and another place to get your firearm and get everything put together and get out there, it's probably going to be too late. One of the things that bothers me also is about the 2 years liability. If something, if someone comes in and steals my firearm, then I'm liable for anything that they might do with it for 2 years. That's like saying that if someone steals my car and gets drunk and kills somebody, then I'm liable for that death. And I just think that that's pretty absurd. I also strongly object to the emergency clause on this, and for the same reason that my husband stated, that it keeps us from being able to use the referendum process properly, and makes it so that all that's really left is the initiative thing, and I don't think that's fair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, you guys have taken away the building of a firearm as a hobby, and you can't because of the ghost guns and everything. But at that point in time, are you guys gonna outlaw nailing guns? DeWalt, Milwaukee makes a 18, 20 power, 20 volt nailing gun that can be used and can be construed as a weapon if it's improperly used. But a carpenter uses it as a tool. So that part of that, you just added Home Depot and Lowe's. So you're gonna lock those up too? Please do. You pass this, you have to put them on notice. Now, gun locks. No criminal is gonna walk into my house, break in, and say, hey, you got 30 seconds to unlock your weapon. None of them are. And you as a panel, if me or my wife or my in-law gets hurt, it's going to kind of look like it's going to fall on your head. Now, I wasn't able to call Clackamas County Sheriff, wait 45 minutes to get out there while one of us is bleeding on the floor. That blood's going to fall on the legislation body of the state of Oregon. I really don't want to go there. Okay? What has changed over in the last 10, 15 years that has created this gun violence in malls and schools? You guys have got to change that, because prior to, say, 1995, we never had this. Being serving in the United States Navy, I want you to understand, by you guys taking away our Second Amendment rights, you dishonor any one of us that has a DD-214. Because we took the choice. Second Amendment is in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. And Henry Wessinger. As they're coming up, the final panel will be Kim Rollins, Dennis Powers, and Tammy McKenzie.
Hey, can I interrupt you guys real quick? We're trying to get as many people that are opposed to this bill over in the galleries of the House of Representatives by, I think they're going to convene around 10:45.
Same Senator
Head over there around 10:30.
After the meeting, I'm Dr. Jim Scott.
You need to go down these stairs and then go up the opposite stairs.
Myself and
the national positions
side there, and then once you get up to that floor, you need to hang a left,
groups that have
hang another left, and there'll be a
pioneered the
staircase right
concept of
there, head up that staircase,
gun
one
violence
flight of stairs,
as public health
and that hallway,
emergency.
you'll see
Here in
the
support of
this side, and if you want to
finally
head over
a
the other side.
comprehensive approach.
So it's the House of Representatives chamber?
Violence. You know, I was reflecting as
They're
I
going
go
to be
down
convening there, and they want to see a big
time
crowd
in this
there.
Capitol.
People are close. You can't. You gotta go down to
My legislators. It was 51 years ago.
They want
In
us there.
1968, after Bobby Kennedy was killed, we formed a group
Well,
called
this is a little testimony.
was advocating for gun violence protection. And it didn't go anywhere. I've been down here already since then. It was nice to see some progress over these 50 years. So I practiced in a rural area for 20 years. For much of that time, in addition to my practice, I served as the local medical examiner. I witnessed results of gun violence on both of these sides. As medical examiner, gun suicides almost every time. And unfortunately, some of those are older men in my age group, and we're not probably going to be very effective in solving those. So when you see a teenager or a young child kill themselves with a gun, you never forget that. In my practice, covering emergency rooms, places like that, I had multiple episodes of people coming in with overdoses or other gestures. We always say that. I never lost my life, but I never saved somebody. The fact is that safe storage is responsible, as pointed out by responsible gun owners, will save lives. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Brzezinski, Vice Chair Thatcher, and members of the committee. Thanks for staying to hear what we have to offer. My name is Otto Schell. I'm Legislative Director for the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association. We have a 100-year history of advocating for children and youth in Oregon. And I'm here today to encourage your support for SB 978-1. Like many of the folks who have talked to you from both sides of this discussion, I come with a life experience of being a former police officer and a current gun owner, and then a long time advocate with PTA, talking to a lot of parents, talking to a lot of students like the ones you heard today. It's pretty clear to us that safe storage will make a difference. It will stop the suicides, particularly impulsive teens who might choose to use a firearm that's not safe to store. When I was a law enforcement officer, I saw what the consequences of improper storage, access by kids, and suicide look like. And I think we can make some progress on preventing those events by using a careful focus on safe storage. Oregon PTA has a broad membership across the state, owners of guns and non-owners of guns. But one thing we are concerned about is the easy access to firearms that kids even use on themselves or others. We think the provisions of the oversight measure will make a difference in save lives. We are doing this one 978. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Brzezinski, Vice Chairman Thatcher, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Henry Wessinger, and I testify today in support of Senate Bill 978. I'm a fifth-generation Oregonian, an uncle of three nieces who are public school teachers in Bend, Salem, and Portland, and president of State of Safety Action, a nonpartisan organization working to reduce gun violence and promote gun safety for all Oregonians. State of Safety Action was actively involved in the drafting of Senate Bill 275, which became sections 5 through 10 of SB 978-1, and that will be my focus today. From polling done last year, 75% of Oregon gun owners already practice safe storage, as would be required by SB 978-1. Having 100% of Oregon gun owners practice safe storage will reduce gun violence in Oregon. A comprehensive federal study showed that 2/3 of all weapons used in school shootings came from the home of attackers or the home of the relative of the attacker. Guns stored to prevent unauthorized use don't get taken to school. Hence, SB 978 will make school shootings less likely. Easy access to firearms is also directly related to higher firearm suicide rates, which predominantly affects Oregon gun owners and their families. Suicide experts have shown that even the few seconds it takes to open a bedside gun safe or unlock a trigger or cable lock creates an important mental moment which will reduce firearm suicides. States that have passed safe storage legislation have experienced reduced suicide rates above the national average, with 14 of Oregon's 36 counties having firearm suicide rates twice the national average. I urge the passage of SB 978-1. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. Kim Lawrence, Dennis Powers, Tammy McKenzie. And whoever would like to start, I'll do it. My name's Kim Rollins, and I'm over here from Burns, Oregon. I'm here to oppose this bill and amendments. The reason for that is because I think you've got it backwards. And rather than making it safer, you're going to make it more dangerous and cause a huge financial burden and the cost of the loss of innocent lives. I'm 68 years old. I'm an old man. I've owned and responsibly used firearms for 61 years. Twice in my life, I've had to defend myself against a violent criminal with a wet weapon. The last time was 2 summers ago. I retrieved a responsibly stored firearm and stopped a man from using a knife on family members and myself. You ask that we speak from our heart. If my firearm would have been locked up or locked in separation of the ammunition, somebody in my family, and maybe me too, would have died that day. I hear somebody talk about the locks and you get it into your gun in minutes. There are not minutes of time. Most of the mass shootings have taken place in gun-free zones, and that's because those criminals are cowards. You have proposed not only making more gun-free zones, but making self-defense free zones. The bill even has the elimination of mace, pepper spray, non-lethal items that people can use their gun. This is a mistake, and I'm strongly opposed to it. Thank you.
Gun rights are women's rights. Yes. Gun rights are men's rights. Gun rights are Americans' rights. I hope you remember that. They're set in the Constitution. Having the right to defend ourselves is a basic human right. Just because some think the Constitution is outdated, not useful, they want to abandon it, I think they're wrong. It is still the law of the land, and it's what people who serve the country swear an oath to uphold from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the Second Amendment makes me equal to anyone. Any man, I can defend myself. In this state, I see a growing trend to not uphold the Constitution. A judge who makes a felon out of a man who simply was defending himself from a mob. Red flag gun laws, where almost anyone can accuse you of being a criminal, someone who would use it against someone else and take gun rights away. That's no due process. Forcing religious people to go against their religion, sanctuary state. There are millions of gun owners in this country, and they would never harm anyone. They would defend people to their death. That's what I would do. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And basically, we do not have law enforcement in McKenzie Bridge. If you call for somebody, you're looking at up to an hour or even longer for somebody to get there. Now, in my opinion, Oregon has more criminals than we need right now. This bill is designed to make gun owners criminals. Everything in this bill is designed to criminalize actions that we have been taking for years, and now if we do that, we're criminals. If I'm driving through a parking lot, I may be committing a felony because somebody has decided that a store in a mall and the surrounding area, adjacent property, I think it said, is a gun-free zone. So I can't keep it there. I can't take my wife to the airport and drop her off because I can't drive in that parking lot, according to this bill. I can't put her on the train unless I leave my firearm at home. And one last point, I've heard the phrase common sense gun laws used several times in here today. Does it make sense, and is I or my family safer if you take away my ability to protect myself and my family? I don't think so. That's not common sense to me. Thank you.
It will stay open until this Thursday, the 4th, at 5 p.m. For those who did not have an opportunity to give testimony, or those who want to supplement their testimony, please feel free to do so by submitting it to the committee by this coming Thursday, April 4th at 5 p.m. The work session for this bill is scheduled at this point for Monday, April 8th. And that's when we will be taking the bill up again for a possible work session. With that said, I do want to take a moment to say thank you to each and every one that's here in the room and those who are in the overflow rooms. And I also want to thank each and every one of you for being, as I would say, all of us would say, true Oregonians to listen to each other, even though we may have polar opposites. The opportunity to appear before the committee. So thank you very, very much for all that. And again, if you want to give additional testimony, you have until Thursday, April 4th at 5 p.m. So we'll close the public hearing with the work session scheduled at this point for Monday, April 8th.